Let's jump right into this explainer and look at a company you probably interact with every single day without even realizing it. SAP. Now, if you don't spend your days obsessing over enterprise resource planning, get a load of this statistic. Roughly 77% of the world's transaction revenue touches an SAP system at some point. 77%? That is absolutely massive. It's basically the invisible central nervous system holding the entire global economy together. We're talking about the unyielding core infrastructure managing everything from insanely complex global supply chains right down to the nitty-gritty details of payroll for thousands of the biggest companies on Earth. But what actually happens when that central nervous system needs a massive upgrade?
Well, as the quote goes, enterprise software change is never simple. Moving a global giant's legacy ecosystem into the modern cloud, it's not just a standard software update. You can't just click update, go grab a coffee, and wait for a loading bar to finish. No way. It is arguably the most difficult, complex, and frankly, dangerous maneuver in modern business. So today, we're going to unpack exactly why that is and map out the sheer cinematic scale of what we call the SAP transformation case.
Section 1. The central nervous system. To truly grasp the massive stakes of this operation, we first need to understand what SAP actually does for these organizations and why changing it is so incredibly risky. Just think about the stark contrast in how software grows today. Over on one side, you have companies like Atlassian scaling through a really frictionless product-led growth model. Teams sign up, download a tool, and literally start collaborating in minutes. It's kind of like a rocket ship taking off in zero gravity, right? Adoption is just that easy. But SAP, totally different story. SAP is a deeply entrenched system of record. It doesn't just sit on top of a company's operations for convenience. No, it is the absolute foundation. It houses the critical data a company simply cannot afford to lose or even misplace for a fraction of a second. Essentially, it is the operation itself. Section 2. Business heart surgery. Because it's so deeply embedded, a system of record isn't just an everyday app. It's the defining technological framework of an enterprise. This means that when you undergo an SAP transformation, you are operating directly on the heart of the business. Honestly, it's like performing open heart surgery on a patient while they're awake on a treadmill trying to run a marathon. The stakes are just unimaginably high. One wrong move, maybe one corrupted data table or misaligned server during this process, and boom, total operational failure. Warehouses literally stop shipping inventory, tens of thousands of employees don't get their paychecks, and multinational financial reporting just grinds to a complete halt. And this brings us to a really perilous position known as the digital capability gap. Our source material highlights how legacy companies, much like the famous retailer Marks & Spencer, can find themselves severely trapped. See, Marks & Spencer had decades of incredibly complex retail history and custom business logic hard-coded right into aging on-premises servers. They were caught squarely between the rigid weight of those heritage systems and the urgent demands of a super fast-moving digital future. They knew they had to modernize to survive, absolutely, but the sheer gravity of trying to extract all that legacy data, it makes the leap to the cloud incredibly terrifying. Section 3. The cloud competitors. So, if it's really this dangerous, what's forcing these giant enterprises to undergo this high-stakes heart surgery in the first place? Well, over the last decade or so, disruptors like Salesforce and the Snowflake Data Cloud have completely rewritten the rules of enterprise tech. They've essentially proven that speed and agility are the new baseline. And they introduce consumption-based pricing, which means you just pay for the exact computing power you use, and you can deploy it almost instantly across a global workforce. This agile new reality is relentlessly attacking the market. It's forcing SAP to pivot aggressively to its own modern cloud solutions like S/4HANA just to hold on to its historic market power. Basically, SAP has to prove to the world that it can move at the speed of the modern cloud. But SAP is fighting back, and they're doing it by using their late mover status to reframe the entire conversation. Instead of apologizing for being this complex behemoth in a world of really standardized, fast cloud apps, they argue that their heavy complexity is actually a massive competitive advantage. They go to their enterprise clients and say, yeah, we're highly complex for sure, but that complexity is exactly what you need to navigate shifting global regulations, brittle international supply chains, and complicated multinational tax codes. They are essentially selling the unique capability to handle the hardest, most punishing parts of doing business on a global scale. Section 4, the human element. Because, perhaps the biggest reason this transformation is never simple isn't actually the code at all. It's the people. You can buy the most sophisticated software architecture on Earth, but if your culture isn't ready for it, the surgery will fail, period. When you change a foundational system like SAP, you're essentially changing every single job in the company. We saw this catastrophic disconnect historically with the Nokia leadership failure. It's a prime example showing that even if you possess great technology, if your leadership and your talent aren't fully aligned with the technical shift, you lose the market entirely. On the flip side, though, we see companies like Accenture proving that a dedicated, intensive skills strategy is what actually shapes growth. It's all about leading a massive, company-wide behavioral shift to meet the moment. The stark reality here is that you just cannot separate the technical from the human. A technical shift of this magnitude absolutely requires a full-scale workforce transformation. Success in an SAP migration means training an entire generation of consultants and internal teams to stop doing things the old, customized, manual way. Instead, they have to be trained to embrace true enterprise automation. We're talking about a setup where routine processes run themselves, freeing up the humans for higher-level strategy. You are quite literally rewiring how thousands of people go about their daily work.
Section 5. A marathon, not a sprint.
Now, let's take a step back and look at the sheer scale of the timeline for a project of this magnitude. Years, not weeks, not months, years. During the pandemic, we saw agile software companies like Zoom face these hyper-growth infrastructure challenges, and they sprinted to solve them in a matter of weeks, right? But a complete SAP transformation is a grueling, exhausting marathon. It demands years of meticulous strategic planning, incredibly complex phased rollouts, endless parallel testing to make sure the old system and the new system match perfectly, and just constant refinement to finally migrate an enterprise to the cloud safely. And over those many, many years, you have to maintain intense brand trust. Case studies like Prêt-à-Manger or Chipotle show us perfectly that internal mechanics totally dictate external relationships. If a core internal SAP process breaks during this multi-year transformation, meaning inventory tracking glitches and stores literally run out of fresh food to serve, the relationship with the end consumer is immediately destroyed. A customer doesn't care about your cloud migration, do they? They just care about their lunch. Breaking an internal business process fundamentally breaks a brand's public reputation. So the crucial point to take away from this explainer is this. The more foundational the software is to a company's survival, the harder it is to change. And SAP is the ultimate, epic example of this truth. The transformation is incredibly expensive, it's highly dangerous, and it is culturally exhausting for the teams involved. But in a digital-first world, hard is the only path forward. These legacy giants simply have no other choice if they want to survive and thrive through the next decade of digital disruption. As you reflect on this massive operational challenge, ask yourself this. Can legacy giants truly become agile cloud leaders, or will the immense weight of their own history always hold them back? It's a fascinating problem that really defines modern business. Be sure to check out our other case study explainers on ServiceNow and Cisco to see how the rest of the tech world is navigating these exact same high-stakes pivots. Thanks for learning with us today.